Welcome back, everybody. I'm Nicole Girouard, and this is the Vertical Mindset Podcast. I am joined today by Kirby James, our General Manager here in Ontario. Kirby, welcome. How are you?
I'm really well, Nicole. Nice to see you.
Good. You as well. So I'm really glad we had a chance to sit down and chat today. One of the topics that you and I were discussing was organizational effectiveness and efficiency. And it kind of brought up something that's really extensive throughout your past, mine as well, not as much as yours, of course, but it's the tool and practice of Lean and Six Sigma.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a chat with you. I know a lot of organizations have implemented this methodology within the organization in an effort to be more efficient. But for those that aren't familiar with the tool and the practice and the methodology, could you give us a bit of a background on your experience with it and what Lean and Six Sigma actually is?
Absolutely. So my background is I got a black belt and a master black belt in Lean and Six Sigma. And this is a practice of standardized tools, analyses, and ways of looking at improving the performance of organizations. And there's really two discrete specialties here. One is Lean and the other is Six Sigma. Some organizations will do one or the other. Other organizations will do both together. Lean is mainly focused on reducing waste. And Six Sigma is mainly focused on reducing variability. So if you think about a business, waste is anything that's associated with activity that doesn't deliver value to the customer. So if, we're doing something in-house and the customer will never see the benefit of it, and we're not really sure it brings benefit, that's a waste. In the Six Sigma world, it's when things aren't consistent. So you think about an airline and the planes don't always leave on time. Or you're looking at a manufacturing business and there's product variation. That's where Six Sigma is often used. And that's the big thing about those both areas is that they're really, really important. I think environmentally, I think customers have come to expect both lower cost and higher consistency, higher quality products and services. So these two areas of practice they're dominating the world. Yet there's a lot of change happening because I think people see that there are limitations and flaws with these.
So thank you for that background, Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at then the difference and the variation between the two, and then we look at some of the methodology and practices that we talk about here at Dynamic Achievement with mindset and how we're actually approaching the day-to-day operations, mm-hmm. which Lean and Six Sigma speak directly to. It's your daily practices. How do we look at the two together? Because I know that on the one hand, there's the way we're approaching things. And on the other hand, with Lean and Six Sigma, there are a lot of strict sort of processes and flows that you ideally want to follow. So how do you reconcile the two of those?
For me, some organizations make Lean their culture. Toyota comes to mind, the Toyota production system. It's all about Lean, isn't it?
Right.
Most organizations, Lean and Six Sigma are just tools. They're toolboxes. There's hundreds of tools in the toolbox. So really, the issue here for me is that tools are just tools. It's how they are applied. And for us at Dynamic Achievement, it's the mindset that is behind the application that really makes the difference. And I think the big point I would want to make is that for the most part, not completely, as I'm going to address at the end, mm-hmm. Lean and Six Sigma are problem-solving tools. And so as problem-solving tools, there has to be a problem. And that for me is where our work on the vertical mindset and Lean Sigma come together. And there's an opportunity to shift the way they're applied.
So I can think back to a few examples that you and I have been involved in together and then, of course, separately. Do you have any examples where you can show what that would look like, something practical that we can explain for our listeners?
Yeah, I think that would be most useful. When somebody who's a practitioner of Lean or Six Sigma is asked to put together what we call a project. The project requires a problem statement. And almost 80-90% of the time, that will be defined in the language of what's going on that we do not want. It's an error rate. It's how much waste we have, and waste is bad. In the traditional lean language, a waste is a bad thing. In Six Sigma, a variation is a bad thing. And so a project could look like, well, today, we're only, we've got an error rate of so many percent. We've got a defect rate of so many percent, and that's a problem we need to stop. What happens then, and the entire project, from the project leader through to the people who are running the project, the green belts and the black belts, and even the team that they recruit, everybody is looking at, oh my gosh, that's bad, whatever bad is. And the tools that they use, fishbone analyses, value stream maps, they're doing all kinds of statistical calculations. And what they're trying to find is, okay, let's find out where the source of bad is. And then let's point our powerful toolbox to stop the bad. And for me, the vertical mindset actually inverts this whole conversation and the whole approach to a project. So let me give you an example. Southwest Airlines. Mm-hmm. Southwest Airlines, one of their big things, other than how much fun it is to hear the flight attendant do the safety briefing, mm-hmm. We've all seen those YouTube videos, is what they focus on, the announcement as you're boarding the plane and the announcement when you're on the plane is, and we're going for another on-time departure. What they're trying to create is as close to 100% on-time departures. They're not focused on, oh my gosh, we have 4% late departures. That's a problem. They turn the entire equation around to, we're going for 100. How do we get 100? So my understanding of that organization is they're less focused on let's stop the problem, mm-hmm. to let's design a boarding system. If you've ever flown Southwest, let's design a boarding system that lets people board as fast as possible, as opposed to avoiding being late.
Thank you. That makes sense. I think, and perhaps for me and for our listeners, one thing that always struck me about Lean and Six Sigma is it works beautifully, like you mentioned, Toyota, with manufacturing. If there is a product, a physical product, that is coming out one side from a process on the other.
That's where it started.
Exactly. From a physical, creative perspective, that it fits beautifully. If we take that along with our mindset and implant that into today's world of information products in services where there isn't an actual physical byproduct at the end, how can that apply? How can we take the Lean and Six Sigma practices and apply that to a more administrative? Because I'm picturing if I'm a manager and the reports that need to be done, kind of product related, but information, service providing to our clients. What am I looking at? What am I doing? How am I approaching that environment?
That's a great question. Especially in North America, it feels, and I think from the literature I read, it's true that, our presence in the manufacturing world is less than it's been. Right. The application of Lean and Six Sigma is actually very robust, and similar other, methodologies of Pro-C and ADCAR, and which are a little more change related, mm-hmm. but they have elements that are similar. Everything about Lean and Six Sigma is based on the metric, the unit of measurement. And the unit of measurement, let's say, goes to a service. Well, we've all gone for service. We've called customer service, or I buy a product on, I bought one the other day online, and I had a question. Well, the data that we generate nowadays, when we ask a question online, we usually have to go through some kind of a form. Mm-hmm. And then the data comes in, and they usually survey us and they ask us, so how did we do? Organizations that are using the tools of efficiency when they're looking at customer service, the ones that are looking to minimize complaints, they're really going into the horizontal mindset approach to solving their challenge. Another organization is looking to maximize how great the feedback is. And so can you imagine? Can you see that workplace? Mm-hmm. One is focused on, oh man, we got 3% people hate us. Oh, it's such a problem. What are we going to do about that? Right. As opposed to the organization that says, wow, okay, we're sitting at 97. That's okay. That's good. Actually, it's better than industry average. Mm-hmm. You know, we really think that 99 is actually possible. What would it take to get 99? And then instantly, the project management people, the Lean Sigma kind of people, they get to point their attention on the things it takes to make it happen, as opposed to stopping the things that the people complain about. And that's
I like that train of thought. That's a great implication for applying the Lean Sigma inside. So if I am a Lean Sigma practitioner, I work in an administrative environment. Customer service is a great example with the complaint rates and how happy people are and how quickly you resolve situations. What are my implications if I'm a practitioner within that environment?
To me, the number one is opening yourself up to the idea that you are in a position to be a powerful, creative person. In the years that I spent doing Lean Sigma, both for a major employer and then as a sole practitioner, it's very common that rooms full of people will gravitate very quickly to, let me tell you how many ways I can complain about this, how many different ways I can talk about the problem. And the implication to the practitioner who's leading the room is first, that seems to be an aspect of human nature. So you're not going to change the essence of human nature. Right. However, as a practitioner, you have this magnificent opportunity to infuse into the room a different kind of energy. And it's the energy of, well, okay, yeah, that stuff's actually true. I'm not going to deny that those problems exist. It's like, so, hey, everybody, can you come over to this side of the room, and how can we come into existence the thing we want? I was talking with a colleague of mine. She's an absolute brilliant master black belt. And we got talking about this. Her specialty are what are called Kaizens, which are, very structured and shorter projects to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of organizations. And over about a half hour of our coffee, she talked about how much she enjoys when she can get a group to be creative. Everybody has more fun. We focus on making what we want. And the conversation shift from those people and that process and problem instantly becomes this much more inspired journey to really explore interesting stuff.
That's a very different meeting.
Oh,
would be sitting in.
Oh, it's so completely different. And there was a brilliant article on LinkedIn the other day too, and it talked about embrace the 1%.
Yes, that was fantastic.
Did you see that?
I did.
And this CEO of a startup or of a high-tech company was arguing. He says, look, the people in the room who are ignorant, who really don't know anything, but come in and say, well, why can't we have that? And when people shut them down and say, well, wow, you can't do that. That can't be done. And he was advocating, well, let's hear out their what if, and wouldn't it be cool when we could do that? And that's actually for the practitioner. It's embracing that, well, why can't we have that?
And just to give some context, just in case, because LinkedIn goes so fast and people don't see all the articles. Kirby, when you mention people that come in that are ignorant, quote unquote, of the circumstances, for me, the point that the writer was making was that when you come into a situation and you drop all of the preconceived notions, the biases, even your experience on what's been done in the past, then you're able to now look at the situation, like you said, more creatively. You focused on what's possible as opposed to feeling mentally restricted by what's gone wrong in the past, what's happened before, or you can't go down that road because 3 years ago, this happened in this environment.
And we all know what happened when we did that.
Exactly. And so you kind of narrow yourself further when you use that particular approach and mindset. Whereas with what you're saying, push that aside and look at it with fresh eyes and see where the possibilities can lead you.
I was collaborating a few years ago with this other organization, really quite spectacular people. And I was with a colleague down in Boston working with a client, and they had spent massive amounts of money for, it must have been 6, maybe even 8 different advertising agencies to bring to them a really interesting marketing strategy, advertising strategy for what was going to be a blockbuster product. And it has been. And in this massive room, there were hundreds of ideas all over the board. And as you watched the conversation over the course of the day, you could hear exactly what you said. Mm. Oh, don't you remember we tried that 1, 2, 3 products ago? Oh, yeah. I saw our competitor do that. That didn't go so well. And what ended up happening was I was looking at the room and I saw a lot of beige and sparkles of different colors. And the sparkles, these different colors, were these unique advertising ideas that really would have been quite interesting. And I don't know how they would have gone. Mm-hmm. I do know that the conversation of the day chose the beigest of the beige, because the room didn't embrace the possibility of that different approach. They kept going back to, well, yeah, we know what happened to the last guy that took a big chance. And they ended up with the beigest of the beige.
I'm really glad you went in that direction. What happens when I take a risk or I approach Lean and Six Sigma with this new mindset as opposed to what typically has been done up until now? So you're a black belt, you're a master black belt, if I'm not mistaken, mm-hmm. in the methodology. So if anyone out there listening is a black belt or they are trained and in Lean and Six Sigma, what would your advice be, given what we've discussed, on how they can come into work today and come into a project today, starting today? How can they approach that a little bit differently, a little more positively?
I like this. And this is really where I wanted to get with our conversation, is, to me, there's some real practical steps that can be taken. The first is, and quite unabashedly, please listen to Aiton's podcast on the vertical mindset, because that's where the gold mine is on the origin of this idea that we have about thinking mm-hmm. differently. But let's get away from that. Let me now go right into the methodology itself, because the answer actually exists inside the schools of Lean Sigma. There's a funny thing that happens when organizations roll out Lean Sigma training or they go to a service provider. And what happens is, in your white belt, yellow belt, green belt, some groups do brown belt, mm-hmm. and black belt training, you're taught the methodology with increasing rigor. So the breadth and the depth keeps going.
Yes.
More and more tools, more and more scenarios, more and more rigor, more and more skill. Yeah, like the skill, like the statistics that we did, was brilliant. Mm-hmm. And then when you become a master black belt, in most organizations that will certify you, like one I'm associated with, moresteam.com, they're brilliant. Mm-hmm. When you get to the material, you'll find an entire new chapter of things that no one's ever shown you. And it's called Design for Six Sigma. And people think that Design for Six Sigma, that the only use for it is to create a new product or service. I maintain it's applicable to those little projects that you've got as a green belt, because it's a mindset. And the mindset shifts from, we have all these tools to stop problems. Mm-hmm. And it moves over to, actually, we have a few new tools that we haven't shown you yet. And they're all designed to be creative. And they're completely within the reach of somebody who's a green belt or a black belt. And the curriculum is already there. You can search it up online. Okay,
I was going to say, so if someone is a white or a green belt, could they find this particular module and absorb it and then apply it to their smaller projects?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's all kinds of things. some of my favorite ones are all about matching what customers want, and focusing on what's wanted. Just the tool itself. The tool is designed to help you see what your customer wants. And instantly it will change the use of all of the stuff that you're currently doing to reorient it towards, okay, now how can we use these same tools to go find what a customer wants? Oh, look, we're doing a fishbone analysis. We get more of what we want when this happens, as opposed to we get more of the bad when that happens. It's instant.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic example of how what you're doing behind the scenes can impact the success and positive momentum and innovation within your organization just by refocusing inside of a project what your customer is looking for. It actually touches on a lot of the topics that we talk about here with our strategic selling, with customer service. Everything is interlinked, and I think that's actually really important. Would you agree that from a leadership perspective, viewing the projects inside the organization from a more cohesive and collaborative nature would in itself make a wonderful difference?
Well, and I think that's a great place for us to close this conversation. You just it's fabulous. You went exactly to the place that I was going to go. Having run lots of projects, the truth of the matter is that the people who oversee the deployment of Lean Sigma and other efficiency methodologies, and the way they coach the leaders in the organization, what they demand of the experts who are doing the work, when they shift their orientation, the leaders of this whole thing, towards let's be more creative, that's instantly where you will start to see the people doing the work start to shift, because we pay attention. The place I want to close is, and what's really fascinating to me, really over about the last 5 to 7 years, has been the explosion of focus on creativity. I studied with Robert Fritz on the creative process, as has Aiton, and he just explodes with these idea about how to be creative and the methodology that goes with it. It goes with Lean Sigma beautifully. But now go and look at IDEO.org.
Yes.
You go and look to the Stanford Design School, and there's this explosion of focus on how to bring creativity into your journey for success. They all leverage a methodology. What's the difference? Maybe they have a little less or different rigor than Lean and Six Sigma, but the main thing they have different is something that's really more like the vertical mindset.
So it's all in how they're approaching it.
It's all that.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kirby. I really appreciate your time today. And for all of our listeners, if there's any information that you're looking for or you'd like to reach out to us, please do so at dynamicachievement.com, and we would love to hear from you.